Welcome back. Lindsey, what's in your lens today?
I got a lot to talk about. So here's the thing. If you're going to name something the big, beautiful bill, you better be ready to defend it. And for Nebraska Congressman Mike Flood, let's just say his mic got flooded with boos. At a town hall with more than 700 fired up constituents, Flood tried to explain why he voted for Trump's sweeping domestic policy package. But he couldn't get a word in without being heckled. Take a look.
The other thing that the big, beautiful bill did, the only way we're going to get through tonight is if I get a chance to tell you why I voted, because ultimately I represent you.
And it didn't let up for more than an hour. Take a look.
Next slide, please. These are the other important parts of the one big, beautiful bill. Next slide, please. No taxes on overtime.
Awkward. Representative Flood blamed, quote, misinformation, but the crowd called him a liar. Yikes. And this kind of reception, it's what Republicans are dreading as they head home for their 6-week summer recess. The first time they're facing voters since the Trump bill was signed, the big, beautiful bill, into law on July 4th. Now, it's a hard sell, given what's in it. There's deep cuts to Medicaid, food benefits, and essential programs that working families rely on. A Quinnipiac poll showed 55% of voters are also against the bill. That number is loud and clear, just like those boos. So while town halls are usually a golden opportunity to connect with voters in your area, Republicans are finding them to be more like hot seats. Even Senator Josh Hawley warned colleagues that cutting essential programs could potentially politically backfire. And add to that lingering frustration over Trump's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein case, whereas the GOP main strategy has been deflect, 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 and lawmakers are bracing for even more political landmines. Now, Republican leadership knows this. Earlier this year, Representative Richard Hudson, who runs the GOP House campaign arm, urged members not to hold in-person town halls. And guess what? They listened for the most part. I assume that's why out of 35 House Republicans in competitive 2026 races, only Representative Brian Steele of Wisconsin has held a recent town hall. And yes, he was also booed. But the discontent is too widespread to mute. After his event, Representative Flood told reporters that showing up was, quote, part of the job, which is fair, but the town hall ended with voters chanting, quote, vote him out. So yes, points for showing up for sure, but no points for pushing through legislation that most people who voted for you did not want.
Yeah, interesting scenario at this town hall, right, where you had these loud boos. I mean, I do think that if you're going to ask Republicans to go out and do town halls, it would behoove you to then at least allow them the opportunity to speak. And instead, he was consistently shouted down by a lot of these people. And this was in Lincoln, Nebraska, which is a more Dem part of his district, of course. So not surprising that there was a lot of discontent. But one of the things that I found really interesting was he was explaining the Medicaid part of the big, beautiful bill, which requires able-bodied young adults to work in order to receive Medicaid benefits. And the crowd started shouting, no, we don't want that. We want everybody to get Medicaid. We want universal health care. And that's not consistent with where polling is at on the big, beautiful bill. While 55% oppose the bill overall, when you ask them about these individual portions of it, particularly the Medicaid work requirements, that's actually really wildly popular.
And I think that there can be nuance in these conversations, right? I think that there is an intention for Americans to work, and that should always be the goal, is that people should have the incentive to get to work and take care of themselves. But also our country is built in a way that when people fall on extremely hard times or get uncomfortable, and obviously there is issues within our current systems of people abusing. But for the most part, we have these protective layers to help people continue to have their livelihoods and continue towards the American dream, even in the worst of times. And so when you think about the number of millions of people that will lose healthcare, all these people were not frauds. All these people were not Democrats. Some of these people are Republicans and also really needed the help. And I think when you talk about those districts, even Republican senators like Josh Hawley that I named are telling you some of the people that are going to ultimately get hurt are also people that were blindly supportive of Trump, loosely supportive of Trump. Either way, this is not something that maybe you want to do in the same bill that provides tax cuts for people that are well or off in our society.
And the middle class and working class as well. I mean, the tax cuts that were extended were actually one of the largest tax cuts for the middle class in history. It was the corporate tax cut that was made permanent in 2017 by the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. One of the other things that I find interesting about these town halls is that we see a lot of mobilization from left-wing advocacy groups to get people to show up and create these scenes, basically. Early on in the Trump administration, there was a lot of talk about Republicans not doing town halls, and the ones who did show up, we found out that groups like Indivisible and Move On were actually gathering up people from their groups, their activists, to go there and shout down the Republican congressmen. So at this point, I wouldn't do a town hall either if I know I'm going to show up and just get met by people who are trying to create this viral moment. Like, am I really talking to my constituents, or is this more of an astroturfed effort?
I can be fair and say hats off to Mike Flood for even doing this,
right?
Because, yeah, that's definitely a thing. But when I looked at the numbers, there was a line outside of the door before this event even started. I think there is a genuine interest in what he has to say, especially now that he's home for this recess, or not really a recess for people that are still going to continue working this summer, to actually engage. Part of the problem has been mostly for the Democratic Party, but also in both parties, the lack of a trust in your officials, but then also a lack of listening to the people that are voting for you. And so people feel left out by that conversation and think that decisions are being made in a way that doesn't directly affect what the voter is looking for. And so I do think that while there probably were people in there that had the intention to protest, there were still 700 people there total. And I don't think that a majority of them were there because they didn't want to hear an explanation. I do think that there actually is a call to explain how this big, beautiful bill is so big and beautiful, because this is not an objective statement, right? Some people really think this is a mess. And there's two polls. I didn't use the CNN poll, but that was even higher of the amount of Americans that don't want it. But I used the Quinnipiac poll in my lens. But I think it's important to just understand that there are some people that maybe were uncomfortable with this moving forward. And while there are plenty of winning issues for the Republicans at the moment, like immigration, when it comes down to the overall concept of it, I don't know that this big, beautiful bill was one of them. Even deficit hawks were uncomfortable with it. So I think no matter what, it can't just be blamed on one party trying to sabotage. There are real criticisms, which is why the bill was held up in Congress back and forth between the House and Senate for so long.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. There are obviously Republicans who are not happy with the bill either. And, I think looking at what Mike Flood did going out to this town hall, there's going to be other staff members in Congress working for Republicans, and I've heard this from some of them, who'd say, you couldn't pay me enough money to hold a town hall at this moment because we know what's going to happen. So I think that's 100% fair. I do think the polls showing the overall opposition to the bill versus when people are asked about actually
the
measures
details
that are in it is important, but also the overall numbers are probably what people are going to be thinking about when they head to the polls in the midterms. I wonder if this is going to kind of shake out like the Inflation Reduction Act did, where it was overwhelmingly unpopular as well. But then over time, people sort of moved on from that piece of legislation, as they often do with these reconciliation bills, where the details start to get lost as time goes on, and maybe they don't see a direct impact on their paycheck or what they're working on.
And campaign season is about to start for people in the midterms, so they have to consider that they have to face the fire. Whether you do phone calls or town halls, you have to talk to people. So.
That's right. Yeah, everybody should be doing that. All right, up next, President Trump is threatening to federalize Washington, D.C. after a prominent former DOJ staffer was the victim of an alleged carjacking. Stay with us.